The wind howled like a grieving widow that night, ripping through the pines and crashing against the old wooden house on the hill. Snow fell in thick, blinding sheets, coating the world in a suffocating white silence. Power lines snapped under the weight of ice, and roads disappeared beneath the storm's fury. But inside that small, weather-worn house just outside Aspen, a single flicker of hope still glowed from the fireplace. And from the heart of a woman named Margaret Holloway, a 62-year-old housekeeper with aching joints, an empty fridge, and a soul full of kindness. If you believe in the power of kindness, second chances, and that one good deed can change the course of a lifetime, then please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you care about, subscribe for more powerful stories like this, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Margaret's shoes? 2. Margaret had lived alone ever since her husband passed away 7 years ago. Life hadn't been easy. After decades of cleaning houses for wealthy families who owned vacation homes in the mountains, her body bore the quiet scars of relentless labor, calloused hands, a stiff back, and chronic knee pain that flared with the cold. Her own children had moved far away, busy with their lives. She didn't blame them. She never asked anyone for anything. But she gave, freely, quietly, constantly. To neighbors, to strangers passing through town, to the stray dog that now slept at the foot of her bed. She always found a way to give, even when she barely had enough for herself. That night, the storm came fast. The power was out, and Margaret was using candles to find her way around the little cottage she once shared with her late husband. She'd stacked wood near the fireplace earlier that day, and thank God she did. Because by 9 p.m., the temperature inside had dropped below 50 degrees. Then, there was a knock. At first, she thought she imagined it. Who could possibly be outside in a storm like this? But then it came again. Firm, urgent. When she opened the door, what she saw didn't make sense. 15 people. Men and women, all wearing designer coats soaked through with snow, huddled together on her porch like lost children. Some were shivering uncontrollably. One was crying. Another had a bloody gash on his forehead. Behind them, 2 expensive SUVs were half buried in snowdrifts. The storm had forced them to abandon the vehicles after they slid off the road. She didn't recognize them, not at first. They didn't look like people from around there. Later she would find out they were billionaires and CEOs from New York and Los Angeles. An elite networking retreat gone wrong when the storm hit hard and early, trapping them on the mountain road. But Margaret didn't see wealth or power. She saw fear, exhaustion, desperation. And so, without hesitation, she stepped aside and said, "Come in before you freeze to death." Her house was tiny. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, barely enough room for herself. But that night, she gave up everything. She made pallets on the floor from old blankets. She boiled hot water on the fireplace to make tea. She rubbed one woman's frozen hands between her own until they turned pink again. She found old sweaters, socks, even her husband's jackets from the attic. She fed them what little she had, cans of soup, stale bread, and a few potatoes from the root cellar. No one complained. In fact, they were stunned. These were people used to 5-star hotels, private jets, and Michelin-starred meals. But that night, on a wooden floor in a humble house, filled with warmth and sincerity, they experienced something they hadn't felt in years. Genuine human kindness with no strings attached. Through the night, Margaret stayed awake, checking on each guest, feeding the fire, offering gentle comfort. One of them, a young tech entrepreneur named Daniel, asked her why she was helping strangers. Margaret simply said, "Because someone once did it for me." When morning finally came, the storm had passed. The roads were still blocked, but the sun pierced through the frost-laced trees. The guests stood outside, dazed by the beauty of the snow-covered world and the fact that they were alive and safe. Thanks to one woman's heart, they offered her money, thousands. She refused it all. "Just get home safe," she told them. "That's enough for me." They took down her name and address, despite her protests. One of them, a woman named Caroline Wexler, who owned one of the largest interior design firms on the West Coast, hugged her and said, "You don't know what you've done for us." Margaret didn't expect anything to come of it. She went back to her quiet life, sweeping floors and baking cornbread in the cast iron skillet her mother gave her, but 3 days later, the doorbell rang, and kept ringing. When she stepped onto her porch, her mouth fell open. Cars everywhere, shiny Blacktown cars, SUVs, delivery trucks, moving vans. 135 vehicles lined the snowy street, one after another, stretching for blocks. People were unloading furniture, food, clothes, lumber boxes wrapped in gold ribbon. Reporters stood with microphones. Neighbors stared from their windows in disbelief. Margaret clutched the edge of the doorway, overwhelmed. And then she saw them. The very same people she had taken in that night. But now, they weren't freezing. They were glowing with gratitude. Caroline walked up the steps and took her hand. "We couldn't forget what you did, so we came back." They had pooled their resources, tens of millions of dollars, and built her an entirely new home, right on the same land. A 2-story cottage, designed to keep the original charm, but with state-of-the-art insulation, solar panels, heated floors, and wide-open spaces flooded with light. Inside was a gourmet kitchen, a cozy reading room, and a bedroom with a view of the mountains. They didn't stop there. They created a foundation in her name, the Holloway Fund for Compassion, designed to help rural communities prepare for weather disasters and support elderly homeowners in need. Her medical bills were paid. A car was gifted to her, and someone had tracked down her children, flying them in for a reunion she had long given up hoping for. Margaret wept, standing in the center of a life she never dared dream of. Not because of the house, or the money, but because for once, she was seen. All those years of giving unnoticed and unthanked had finally come back to her in the most unexpected way. What touched everyone even more was that Margaret didn't change. She opened her new home to neighbors, hosted dinners for the lonely, and taught young kids how to cook from scratch. The woman who had so little continued to give so much. If this story moved your heart, please let us know by liking this video, sharing it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribing for more inspiring real-life stories. And in the comments, tell us,